1955 versus 2025. Who actually had it better? Let's run it.
This is me if I lived in 1955. Here I am in 1975 and 1995, 2015, and then today. I'm going to put myself in the shoes of a middle income earner in all of these decades to answer a very important question about the United States. Is the average American better off today than they were all these decades ago? Does the typical American make more money, have a better chance of owning a home? It's an important question because
yeah, inflation's just gone up like crazy. Because like now it's not like the 50s where, only one person needs to go to work and then be able to afford a decent sized house and 2 cars.
this graph shows that.
But also, I think we're spending a lot more money and putting ourselves in way more debt.
Our economy has grown immensely since the 50s. I mean, we've got the.
And I say that with just like the smaller purchases, the coffee, that just adds up. People don't cook at home as much.
Largest economic pie on earth. And even when you account for inflation and the fact that our population has grown, you still see immense growth. I mean, look at this. We've added tons of prosperity in this country that theoretically every person is entitled to some part of. Or, as some economists put it, has our country produced shared prosperity?
When I think about how well the economy delivers, I think about how well it delivers for the people, for the workers and their families. How well are they receiving that prosperity?
I'm going to show you how all of this economic prosperity we've created has been shared or not shared. And in all of this, I want to get to the bottom of perhaps one of the most important questions in our country, which is everyone able to move up? If they work hard enough or if they get educated, can you climb the economic ladder here?
I think that's different, especially with education, because before, when you were in like the 80s or the 90s and you went to college and you got that degree, that was just like a cheat code. You know what I mean? But now, in this current time with how bad the job market is, like I see so many times I have a master's degree and Walmart denied me.
You're going to do better than your parents. Can you reach higher levels of income?
But I think now, with the way things are, because since like the dawn of time, you wanted to do better than your parents did. But I feel like now most people are about the same income as their parents.
Can you change your relative position?
The American dream, we sometimes call it. A, quote, dream of a better, richer, happier life for all citizens of every rank. Is that still alive? And if not, why? I believe that answering these key questions is incredibly important for the future of this country, which is why we've been deep in all of this.
But I still think, though, there's a lot of opportunities that you do have with the American dream.
Data, and I'm going to try to lay it out as clearly as possible by traveling through time. As always, all of the assertions in this video are fact-checked and linked in our sources. So with that, let's start traveling back in time.
That's why I like this guy, because not a lot of people do that.
Can't repeat the past. Why, of course you can.
Okay, so I'm traveling back towards the 1950s. As we move through time, I'm going to be keeping an eye on this main graph. This graph is kind of our anchor. It will be showing how the economy has grown over time. And again, it's adjusted for prices and population growth. When this graph goes up, it means that there's more economic prosperity to go around. We're going to see how it gets divided up. And for each decade, I'm going to be looking at these 4 economic indicators. Am I making more money? Can I afford a house? Is this economic growth being shared equally by everyone? And how likely am I to be making more than my parents? Oh, look, we're arriving to the 1950s. So it's the 1950s here in America, and I, the middle income earner, have just returned from fighting in the most devastating war of human history. But we Americans came out on top, and our economy is booming. I work in this car factory. It's one of the many factories that was converted from making weapons to now making valuable stuff that we're shipping around the world.
You can't just have one person work in a factory and provide for the whole entire household unless you're like super high up management or something.
Our country is getting rich. I am making an average income. So my income right now is $4,400. In today's money, that's more like $41,000. We're going to
That's actually insane.
adjust everything for modern dollars, in this case, 2023 dollars. Prices are higher these days, so our money's more valuable to make it all make sense. Okay, wait, pause. I'm not going to do that every single time, like talk about the inflation. I'm just going to say everything from now on in modern dollars. It'll allow us to compare a lot easier between the decades. Okay, with that, let's get all the magic going again. Pretty cool, right? Let's meet my family. So my wife doesn't work. Only a third of women did back then. And really, she doesn't need to. My factory job supports the whole family. And look, I own that home. I paid $84,000 for this thing, again in modern dollars. That's actually not that much more than my yearly salary.
That's actually crazy. Like, what?
This is considered very affordable. And a major reason why is because the government is helping me pay for a lot of this. And they've got the cash to do it. I mean, look at the top tax rate for the rich. So a booming economy and all this tax revenue means that the government is helping build all of these suburban homes and is giving us veterans good deals on mortgages so that we can get in on the prospering US economy, start building wealth by owning a home.
Our returning serviceman who was starting his own business would get a financial boost from the government.
I do think now, because I've seen they've been building a lot of houses and a lot of like new neighborhoods, so I wouldn't be surprised if prices would start to come down. I could be wrong though, but that would just make sense in my head, and for like supply and demand.
Our money would be advanced to buy property or a home.
We're coming out of World War II. There are absolutely lots of public programs. Policymakers today and back then had a lot to do with how typical workers and their families were doing.
Okay, so the economy is booming. Let's see how all of this prosperity is being shared. And for that, I'm going to show you this amazing graph. I love this graph. We're going to see it over the decades, and it tells a very useful story. This is my income, the median earner. Here's the income of the top earners, and this line is the low income in America. And down here is like years. Okay, watch what happens. Ready, go. Look at this, look what's happening. All three of these income brackets are increasing their income at the same rate. We are all getting in on this prosperity. We are sharing the spoils of a booming economy. Nice.
In the roughly 2-3 decades after World War II, we saw what I would consider broadly shared prosperity. As the economy grew, as workers became more productive, workers across the board were
It is crazy though how much an effect war does have on the economy.
actually seeing gains
And you see that what's happening right now, even with like the gas prices.
in their living standards.
This is a great indicator that income equality in the United States is good and healthy. Okay, last thing for the 1950s, let's check in on the American dream. Can I move up the ladder? There's a really nice data set for this that says that I am nearly 100% likely to earn more than my parents. There is upward motion in the economy. The American dream is alive.
Yeah, and it's crazy how much of a difference it makes. I mean, that number, as of now, is definitely way lower.
At least for me, which is an important caveat here. Women were mostly left out of this economic version of the American dream, and so were people who weren't white. Like Black Americans, 10% of the population, over 1 million of whom fought in the war, but upon returning were met with these custom maps that were drawn to determine where they could and could not.
Oh, what is that called? Is that called, was that redlining?
They were largely left out of all of this government help that allowed me to get education and buy a home and build wealth. But if you're just looking at the numbers, the 1950s was a really good time for the median income earner. You could have a family, work in a factory, and be loaded with opportunities to move up the economic ladder, thanks to a booming economy and a bunch of government programs. So now let's move forward in time to the 1970s.
It's so weird to think about, like, living in... I mean, mainly, like, before the 2000s when, like, phones and all that was really, like, a thing. Phones are a majorly a positive thing, but I think there's something to be said about, like, just being out with your friends and not having phones. Because what happens a lot of times is, like, everyone's just, like, sitting on their phones, but, like, they're all together. You know, but it's like, you're together, but you're not.
Welcome to the 1970s. A lot has changed. The economy is producing a lot more prosperity to go around, as you can see by this graph, and we'll see how that's all being distributed in a second. But first, let's check in on my pay. I'm still working in a factory. I now earn about $66,000. That's an
Well, yeah, now everything's just automated. So, I mean, there's still factory workers, but, I mean, a lot of it's just done by robots now, especially with building cars.
Improvement from the 50s. Or should I say we? Like millions of other women, my wife has entered the workforce. They still only earn 60% of what men do, but look, they're breaking into the workforce. Nearly half of all women are going to be working by the end of the decade. Partly as a push for freedom and economic autonomy, but partly as a necessity. It's becoming harder for a family to be supported by a single earner. The result is that our income is better off than it was in the 50s, but things are also kind of expensive right now. Inflation is up, partly because there's war in the Middle East and they're cutting us off oil, so there's long lines at these gas stations and everything is more expensive. Anyway, check out my house. I had to pay $230,000 for this house.
Yeah, it's a big jump from, what was it, like 80-something thousand 20 years prior?
Housing is getting more expensive, and the government is raising the interest rate to slow down inflation, which is making my monthly payment a little more expensive. Home purchasing is becoming a little less accessible to the median, but I still have this cool house. Okay, let's go back to this super useful graph that tells us how...
I'd imagine that's also kind of when, like, keeping up with the Joneses kind of became a thing of, you know, get nicer and nicer stuff, which then causes people to go into way more debt.
The economic spoils are being shared.
I think it was always a thing, but I think especially in this time, that's when it probably started to pop off a lot more.
Remember, that's me, the median income earner. And look, my income continues to grow at the same rate as the high income and low income earners in our country. The growing economy is being shared by these different income groups. It's actually pretty impressive how, like, tight everything is moving together as the economy grows. Oh, and look.
Yeah, now it's not like that at all. There's such a major gap between like the top earners and the low earners, and like the middle earners is kind of like fading out.
They've started collecting data on how much more CEOs are making than the typical employee.
But that's what, yeah, when you have CEOs making $300 million a year, but paying their employees $15 an hour.
Looks like by the middle of the decade, it's about 26 times more. Wait, are CEOs making too much? Is that bad? What do you think? I don't know. Let's keep an eye on this chart as time continues, and we can assess if we think this is unfair. Okay, but what about the American dream? How easy it is to make more than your parents? Well, if I'm an adult in the 1970s, it means I was born in the 1950s, which according to this data set means I'm 80% likely to earn more than my parents. I mean, pretty good. The American dream seems to be doing pretty well. So I would say that economic life in the 1970s is better for the median earner than it was in the 50s. And something that we're not covering here because we're looking at the cold hard data is that there's also a revolution happening that's making it more equal and more fair for minority groups in the United States. So these are good trends. Let's see how they continue as we move on to the 1990s.
Guess you guys aren't ready for that yet. But your kids are gonna love it.
To get to the 90s, we have to go through the 80s and look at all of this economic growth. The president has been very busy slashing taxes, getting rid of regulation and social programs, and rejiggering the economy to benefit businesses, making it harder for workers to like gather and get leverage over their employers.
Ronald Reagan, the actor?
And look, we are arriving to the 1990s. What a great decade.
Yeah, if I had to choose like a time to grow up, it would probably be the 90s. So many like great music, great movies, like it just seems such like a good time, and you still then are able to have a good amount of time with like technology. You get to see all of that. Like it must be a crazy evolution for like people to have that pivotal moment of like no technology to a lot of like crazy technology, phones, stuff like that.
Standoff between the United States and the Soviet Union is over, and people are stoked. We enter the 1990s with this little recession. We're getting ready for a big surge of more growth thanks to the rise of the internet. Remember, I am still playing the role of the middle income earner, okay? So it's not like I was like born back in the 50s and I've been growing up. I am a young adult who is the middle income earner. How am I doing? So I still work at a factory. America is still a manufacturing powerhouse here in the 90s, though that is literally right about to change. I wish I could warn myself. My household brings in $76,000 a year, which is definitely better than the 50s and 60s, but you can kind of see that things are flattening out. And in fact, I'm not making that much more than I was in the late 70s. Check out my cool 90s house. It cost me $273,000. That's almost 4 times our yearly income. Way more expensive than in the 50s. Housing.
Yeah, because what was in the 50s, it was like double. So like if you made let's say 40,000, your house would be 80.
Is getting a little less affordable. Okay, the economy's doing
That's just based off like today's economy numbers.
well. How are we sharing all of this economic prosperity? Remember, we started back in the 50s and we saw how the high income, the low income, and me, the middle income, we all saw similar growth in our income gains. We all got in on economic growth equally. That continued through the 70s. But wait, look what happens right here. Whoa, they're diverging.
Yeah, it's when the major gap between like the top and the lower income earners started to really pop off.
It's around the 1980s when you see the top earners start to pull away from the rest of us. Their income is going up faster than mine, and my income is going up a little faster than the low income population. Okay, that's unsettling. I liked it more when they were all kind of like on top of each other, growing at the same rate. We'll keep an eye on this graph, but there's a bunch of other graphs starting to come out. Another divergence happening on how productive the economy is versus how much I get paid. They're both going up at the same time. I'm more productive, I get paid more, cool. But around the same time, the same split happens. My pay starts to flatline even as productivity continues to go up.
So then there's this period that starts around 1979 in the early 80s, where we see this pulling apart between economic growth and what typical workers and their families receive from that economic growth.
So who's getting in on all this extra productivity? This growth that's happening in our economy, if not me? Well, let's check in on those CEOs. So remember back in the 70s, CEOs were making like 25 times more than the typical worker. Kind of seems like a lot. Let's see what happens here. Oh my God, look at this. Okay, whoa, by the end of the 90s, CEOs are making almost 400
Like, that's actually insane to me.
times the typical worker. And I thought 20 times was a lot.
Those at the top
And I can't even, and that was the 80s. I can't even imagine what it's like now.
are receiving much larger shares of that growing economy than those at the middle or at the bottom of the wage distribution. So that pulling apart, that increasing economic inequality is apparent no matter how you look at it. That pie is going increasingly to the very top.
Okay, but isn't inequality often seen as a byproduct of rapid economic growth? Could this be a good thing for our economy? Yes, people are getting really rich really fast, but it's because they're innovating and making our economy more productive. And plus, everything I've shown you is before taxes, guys. So like the rich pay a lot of taxes. Okay, so let's see what happens.
Now with all those tax cuts, a lot of those motherfuckers, the top 1%, they don't pay shit in taxes. I mean, and I say that comparatively to what they make.
To the income of the rich people after taxes. Here we go. Oh, okay. Well, the taxes didn't do that much. There's something going on here. The rich are getting really rich really fast. I mean, what these lines all show is that 1980 was kind of this inflection point in our economy, where the top earners kind of started to get in on most of the prosperity. And yes, there are economists who argue that inequality isn't bad for an economy. It actually spurs growth and investment into the economy, and eventually that raises all boats. It trickles down. And advocates for this way of thinking say that we shouldn't focus on inequality, but instead on poverty reduction. Okay, poverty reduction? How we doing? Poverty plummeted after World War II, but you can see that at this time, in like 1980, when inequality starts to get really bad, poverty basically stays the same, goes up for a big series of years. So this is concerning, and this is my interpretation of the data. I'm sure some of you have very different interpretations, and I would love to see you down in the comments. Anyway, let's check in on the American dream. America's all about big risk, big rewards. So yeah, inequality's happening, but like, if you can go from rags to riches, maybe that's very American and okay. If I was born in the 1970s, I'm now an adult in the 1990s, and the data says that 59% of us born to the middle income will out-earn our parents. So that means that 40% of my peers here in the middle income will earn the same or less than their parents, even as we are seeing all of this economic growth.
Yeah, and that's just because of that major gap in between like the top 1% versus and like everyone else.
I mean, you can see this trend here. The American dream of being able to move up the ladder is becoming less and less a reality for a bigger and bigger portion of the population. Okay, so that was a big change from all the trends, Let's see what happens next.
People assume that time is a strict progression of cause to effect, but actually, it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
Okay, we're moving into the new millennium. America's fighting a couple of wars. The economy's actually doing pretty well until, whoa. The bankers got a little loosey-goosey for a couple of years, making obscene amounts of money and crashing the entire world economy. But okay, let's move on from the biggest recession of our time. We're arriving to the 2010s. This is a world that most of us are familiar with. Let's see how the median
Such a good era. 2016, the best year.
income earner fares. I don't work in a factory anymore. All of those jobs have dried up and been shipped to Asia. So I now work as a middle manager at an insurance company, and my household income is $81,000 a year. Which is, wait a minute, same as 1997, but wait, during this same 13-year period from 1997 to 2010, the economy grew by this much. I mean, that line's going up. The economy's making more stuff, there's more prosperity. Even when you adjust for inflation per capita, the economy grew. There should be more to go around. But my household pay is the same as it was 13 years previous. Why? Well, we'll see in a second, but first, let's talk about my house. I always love talking about my house. Look at this beauty. I can still afford a house. In fact, here in like post-recession America, housing prices are actually
It was right after '08.
pretty low. The bubble burst. Interest rates had to go down to stimulate the economy. And so home purchasing was actually pretty accessible for a few years. But don't worry, housing prices will be back on the rise in a second. And in fact, they'll start rising faster than my income, making housing less and less affordable. And homeownership still seems to be available mostly for certain groups and not as much for others. In fact, that hasn't changed much since the segregation days. Meanwhile, I think I know what's gonna happen to this graph. Yep. The rich are just getting richer faster than my income is going up. And my income's kind of stagnating. Okay, what about the CEOs? Did they pay a price for the big bubble person? Nope, they didn't pay. I mean, they kind of did up and down, but they're still, by the end of the decade, getting paid hundreds of times more than me. Maybe they think they are hundreds of times more productive and they deserve it?
Yeah, I mean, because like the CEOs, yeah, sure, they provide jobs and shit like that, but I still don't think that's a valid reason for you to make $300 million a year or more, and you then pay your employees a very non-livable wage of $15 an hour.
I mean, you get the point on the inequality stuff. This is what we've been hearing about for a long time. All of these graphs have the same shape. This great divergence that happens in the 80s, where the economy is growing, but the wages for the average person just kind of flatten, while the top earners just sort of get in on all of that prosperity. Okay, but the American dream, you can climb the ladder, right? So if you're born in the 1980s, which
Yeah, but now it's so much different now, because back in that time you can climb your way up a corporate ladder. Now the only way to you have to job hop. You have to job hop because your quarter raise a year, an hour, isn't gonna do it. You have to hop around every 2 to 5 years.
You're now an adult in the 2010s, and it looks like for the median earner, the majority of us will earn the same or less than our parents. Yeah, this is a problem, and probably doesn't seem fair to a lot of people. But wait, there's hope.
Star Trek, Terminator, Time Cop, Time After Time, Quantum Leap, Wrinkle in Time, Somewhere in Time, Hot Tub Time Machine. Hot Tub Time Machine.
Okay, I'm back. 2025. That's when I'm making this video. So that's modern day for me. We went through a pandemic. The economy kind of got freaked out for a little bit. And the median income earner actually started to see some gains after years and years of flatlining. So you do see some potential movement here, some hope. But let's get back to the original question that we started this video with. Is the average American better off now than they were back in the 50s and over these decades that we talked about?
If there wasn't such a gap between the 1% and everyone else, people would be so much better off. Because even if you take the person making $300 million a year and you cut that in half and you distributed that to your employees' pay, you're still making $140 million. Your employees are making an actual livable wage. Things would be way better.
A lot of ways, the answer is yes, especially if you are a woman or not white, then the answer is yes, at least in terms of economic opportunity. But what we've seen on this journey is that the American economy has produced an incredible amount of prosperity and growth over these last 7 decades. And that was shared broadly by all of us for a time. But in the last 30, 40 years, the data is very clear that the fruits of the economic growth these days,
like, it's growing for the billionaires. Everyone else just get fucked.
Have not been broadly shared. One group is collecting most of the growth. And I didn't even talk about wealth, like the stuff you just own and how that makes money. We're talking just about income on this. Now, this isn't the first time that we've been in this situation. The top 10% collected almost half of all the income way back in the early 1900s before World War II. But we changed that. Look. And the income starts to be distributed more equally. But this graph tells the same story. Look, 1980, boom, here it goes. We're back.
I mean, since history does repeat itself, I'm curious because I feel like at a certain point, it's gonna kind of do the same thing as this graph. The top 10% takes, most of the income and wealth, and then everyone else just gets fucked, but then it went down. I wonder, when would that happen again? Assuming it happens.
We're back to where we were. Now, does this mean that our economy is broken? No, actually. Our economy is not broken. It is working exactly how it was designed to work. And this, and this, and this, and this, it's the result of changes to the rules, policies that end up determining who gets the money and who doesn't. These policies are made by people that we elect. And if we don't think that this is
and I don't think people realize, the elections are important, but, the local elections are actually so important. And I didn't really realize that until recently.
fair,
Because that will determine, in your specific area, so much shit.
we have the power to pressure them to design a system that is fair. Now, the medium income earner doesn't have nearly as much power these days. The top income earners and the corporations have really gotten their foot in the door for the people who have the power to set the rules. So it's harder than ever. But this still is a democracy. And if we don't think a system is fair, we still have the power to pressure our politicians to change it.
The reason why it's like this is because a lot of the politicians who've been in office forever, they're old as fuck. But I wonder in 15, 20 years, after you have kind of younger people get into office and changing things around, if that will help with this problem.
And it's not actually just about income inequality. Yes, that has risen. The rich get richer much faster. It's also about the
Because they're just hoarding all the money and all the power.
American dream, this idea of being able to move up. If you get educated, if you work hard, as inequality has gone up, the American dream has gone down. These graphs are built on robust data, and this is the story that it tells. The rungs of the economic ladder have gotten wider and wider apart. And that American dream, ironically a term coined by a rich investment banker born into a rich family in New York City, that dream is looking more and more like a myth.
W video by Johnny Harris. If you subscribe, leave a like, what I said, do the whole thing.
Got these voices in my head, I got some things will never change. Never change, at least I'll stay in my lane. I'll tell this bitch to leave me alone, but she won't get up on my